Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Raw Talk with Tante Katie. I'm happy you guys are here with me today, as always. I've actually been sick for the last 2 weeks, so that's why I kind of took a little bit of a break from podcasting just because I wanted to drink a lot of fluids and get my tea, my ginger, my honey in and just focus on that. But one of the things that I was able to do the last few weeks was really reflect on things that are important to me and things that I want to share and kind of put out there. And, you know, something I was not sure if I wanted to share, I was kind of like on the fence, like, should I not, which is my coming out story. And the reason why I do feel like this is so important is because I don't feel like there is that much representation of people in the gay community really talking about what they went through and their stories. And I think it's important for me as a person in this world to really share and be open and be honest and kind of put a different perspective out there. I think it could do a lot for people. And I'm not doing this for me. This is something I've always wanted to do for others. And that has always been the point of this podcast is for me personally, this isn't something I'm doing for sympathy, empathy, any of those things. I want to do it to spread awareness on issues, to spread a perspective on things, which is my perspective. And I think it could be really insightful for a lot of people out there. You know, we live in this huge world. There's 8 billion people at the moment walking around. And I think we all have really incredible stories. Each and every one of us has some form of a something we've been through that can really maybe help another person or kind of, just maybe change the way you look at things. And that's why I really want to put this out there. It is taking courage, I'm not going to lie, because to do something like this, it's personal, It's a personal thing for me, but it's not about me. It's not about me. It's about all of us. We're all connected and that's why I want to share this with you guys. So I'm going to be sharing this and yeah, I'm going to start everything off from the beginning. Which is I was born in Washington State. I was actually born at Good Sam Hospital. And before I was born, the doctors had actually told my parents that they were going to be having a boy. This is before they could see the gender. And the doctor had said, "This is such a strong heartbeat. It's definitely going to be a boy. It's definitely going to be a boy." And then, what do you know? Here comes Katie. Here I am, born into the world. I grew up in Eatonville, Washington, which is a town of about 2,000 people. Well, it was at the time. I don't know what the population is looking like there. And growing up, my mother was a preschool teacher. She had a preschool and a daycare. And then my father was also a high school teacher. So when I was growing up, the majority of my first memories were growing up in my mom's preschool. And the reason for that is because just imagine a house and the daycare part was actually in our living room. And then if you walk outside, there was another building literally 5 steps from our house, which was my mother's preschool. So when I would step outside, I always had, somebody to play with. I was always, rambunctious and excited. And my friend's dad always said that when I was growing up in the preschool that I was like the rooster of the coop. I was always looking around, seeing what's going on, scoping things out, maybe a little bossy, but that was who I was, and even when I think of when I was growing up, there weren't a lot of rules. There really wasn't. It was kind of like a free for all. Like I could just have fun. My mom's way of thinking was she didn't want to be a helicopter mom. She wanted us to go out there, trip and fall and scrape our knees and get up and kind of like live life and not always have to watch us. So as a kid, I had a ton of freedom and I didn't really feel very conformed as far as this is a woman's space and this is a men's space. And, I am actually pretty happy that I did grow up like that. I remember I was also allowed to play with my brother's toys. I remember he would get slime for Christmas and all that. Although there was one year where I did want that baby born. I don't know if you guys remember that baby born. There was one year I did get that baby born and I was very excited about it. And I was also, I would say, very competitive as a kid, which I still am, but I've gotten better. But I would say as a kid, I was competitive to a fault. It wasn't a healthy competitiveness. It was like I was so competitive. Like I remember my dad was playing fetch with my brother. And I remember I got out there and I'm like, put me in, put me in. And I like grabbed a mitt and I'm like, no, throw me the ball, And I just kind of got out there. And I remember my poor best friend and I, she was an only child. We grew up pretty much as sisters. And she was very competitive too, though. That girl was super competitive, but so was I. And I remember there was one moment where we were racing each other on the monkey bars outside, and she had won. And I was so upset that she won that I got really angry, and I think I pushed her down or something. And afterwards, I remember feeling so bad because as a kid, I couldn't lose. And I remember at the time, actually, um, I felt so sorry. I ran into the house and I gave her like one of the girliest things that I had, which was at the time, it was like a little Ariel, from the Little Mermaid, a little Ariel cup. And I was like, here. And I'm like, please forgive me, And I just felt so bad. But I felt like it was almost in my nature that I was also a little bit different. Like I didn't fit into this, what people would call back then, like fit into this cookie cutter girl girl thing. It wasn't really me. And one of the funniest things is that I had really long curly hair for the majority of my childhood, like little ringlets. And I ended up getting gum in my hair. And so my mom, she ended up cutting my hair really short. I got that bowl cut. And if you know the bowl cut, you know the bowl cut. It's literally taking a bowl, if you can just think about it, putting over your head, and it was like a short girl's haircut. And when I was growing up, you know, I didn't get the newest clothes. I really didn't. Like, my mom was buying a lot of my clothes at Goodwill, like secondhand stores, or she'd go and find a killer sale where it would be like $1 for pants, and I just kind of wore whatever. And I was actually wearing a lot of hand me downs for my brother and sister. So, my mom has this preschool, and I have this bowl cut, and I'm wearing whatever clothes were given to me, which were probably boys' clothes. And I remember walking into the preschool, and the girls kind of turned their head thinking, "Oh, who's the new boy?" And I remember really liking that feeling. I remember loving the feeling of, "Oh wow, the girls think I'm cute." Like, you know? And that was like one of the first tastes I had of, okay, I think I kind of like girls a little bit, And it really happened after that haircut. That was like the first time where I was like, "All right, okay." And there was another time in the preschool, because after that haircut, I was like, all right, man. I was new day, new me. Like, I was like, all right, I got this. And I remember at the preschool, one of the ladies working there was doing like, there was dress up and everything, and she was doing dress up for the weddings. And as a kid, you'd have a little boy and a little girl, okay, weddings, whatever. And she was pretending to be the person that did I don't know, for the life of me, I don't know what it is. The person that's kind of doing the vows, like, you can now say you do or whatever. And I remember I grabbed a girl and I'm like, come on, let's get married. And then we were kind of waiting our turn in line. And then the lady goes, what are you doing here? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And she goes, Katie, two girls can't get married. And I was like, well, why not? And she's like, no, it doesn't work like that. And I was like, well, whatever. I was like, that's not okay. And I think for me, that was kind of my first taste of, hey, you're a little bit different, like, you're a little bit different. And, with this new haircut that I got, it really happened that all the girls thought I was a boy. They really did. I remember one girl came up and kissed me. I was so happy. I was like, hey. But then it got to the point where my mom was like, all right, we got to get your ears pierced. Like, people are genuinely mistaking you for a boy based on your haircut, based on your clothes. You're also not playing with Barbies. So, hey, we're going to get your ears pierced. So I remember that happened. And then it was kind of like a new phase started in my life. And the new phase was that my mother had decided to get me into ballet. Now, me and ballet, I can tell you, me and ballet were not a match at all. I mean, it couldn't have been the most opposite thing from me. And, I think my mom got me into ballet because my sister was in ballet and she thought, okay, well, maybe Katie will like ballet. Well, no. What I did like was I liked being around to all the girls, I have to say, because I just did. And honestly, that is my personality, anyways. The majority of my friends are girls. I do have a few guy friends as well. I do, but the majority of my friends are girls. So I, anyways, like that environment. I love females. Like, I just do. I think they're wonderful. Guys are wonderful as well, but you get what I'm saying. And I was the worst ballerina. I know I've seen a film where it was literally doing hit the road jack. You have everybody else going left. I'm going right. Everybody's knelt whatever on their knees. I'm jumping. The curtains close. I'm literally putting my head through the curtains and waving, and it was a recital. It just wasn't me. And I remember that was one of the first times I remember was looking in at myself in a mirror at the dance studio as a kid. And I think I was probably 4 or 5 years old. I had short hair and I'm in this, ballerina tutu. And I just felt like I'm different. Like, I'm different. And also my build, you know what I mean? Like, I'm a different build in general. So even if I'm, at my thinnest, I have broader shoulders and things. And even as a kid, it just didn't fit. It just didn't fit for me. And I remember really struggling with that. I remember it got to the point where I genuinely started to um dread having ballet. I remember it started with just walking up the stairs, and I remember feeling like, oh no, like, it's not me. But at that age, 4 or 5, you don't have the language or vocabulary for that. I mean, at least I didn't. Maybe these kids nowadays going to private schools have the vocabulary for it. I don't know. But I definitely did not at all. And, unfortunately, this was around the same time where my mother started to get really sick. And it kind of felt like whatever feelings that I had about, you know, who I liked or if I was this, I didn't even know the word gay at that time, but I had to put all of those feelings to the side because there were bigger fish to fry in that moment, and that was that my mom was very sick. She had got breast cancer, so I didn't want to focus my energy on anything other than making sure that my mom was going to be okay. And unfortunately, she did end up dying. So, the moment when she did die, that was also hard in the fact that the feelings that I had regarding my mother's death were so overpowering that there was no space. There was no space, not even a single drop at that time in my life to think about my sexuality. I had more important things to be worrying about, which is sadness, really, really just sadness in that moment. So that was unfortunately something that had gotten pushed to the side. And in the town that I did grow up in, being gay was not a good thing. And for those of you who have grown up in a small town or have any knowledge of that, you know that being gay is not something you're going to want to come out and be like, "Hey, I'm gay." I was already known as the girl whose mother had just died. I didn't want to throw an extra thing on there. "Hey, and I'm also gay." Uh-uh. No, no. That was enough for me. That was enough at that time in my life. And it's also funny because people could be like, "Oh, why wouldn't you just come out and say it?" But the thing is, if you think about like nature and all these things, your most important thing, like if you're a cub out in the wild and you just lose your mother, you're not gonna your biggest thing is fitting in and getting in with the group. It's not to make yourself more of a, whatever you want to call it, weirdo, or whatever you want to say. Not that I was a weirdo, but that's definitely how I felt. And imagine the cub being like, "Hey, my mom just died and I'm also gay." They'd be like, it was survival for me. And I'm like, I gotta survive out here. Like, that's how I saw it. So, and, not many people would understand that unless they were in my shoes. So, like I said, being gay in a small town, even when I was growing up, I also said really, I don't want to say mean things about gay people, but when my brother and I were getting into fights, I would, if you have a brother or sister and you're hitting them and da da da. And I remember to get my brother to, if I wanted to win a fight against my brother, I would say, "If you hit me again, you're gay." And there was nothing worse than being called gay. There was nothing worse. And so definitely always heard, not the nicest things, or if there was somebody on TV, "Oh, look at that freak." Or I remember we did have one gay guy. We actually had a few gay people in the town, and there were never kind words spoke about those people at all. Like, I can't think of one nice thing that was said about the gay people in the town of Eatonville, at least the people that I was around. And I was around pretty good people at that time, at least good hearts anyway. So yeah, it was a struggle. It really was. It was a struggle for me. And like I said, I was just trying to fit in, belong in society. But one of the funniest things I do have to say is one of my very, 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 very first celebrity crushes that I had as a kid was Christina Applegate. Now, if you guys have seen the show Married with Children with Al Bundy, oh my goodness. As a kid, I remember when I would hear that song on the TV, the theme song, which was love and marriage, I would just run out to the TV just to see Christina Applegate because I thought she was so beautiful. And that was literally one of the first people I can remember really like having a crush on and admiring. And even growing up, I continued with having crushes on girls. Like it didn't stop. I kept thinking it would. I kept thinking, "Oh, this is a phase. I'm going to grow out of it, and eventually I'm not going to feel these feelings anymore." And I remember in sports, there was one time, I think I was about 11 or 12, and we had gone to a basketball game to watch one of the older girls play basketball. And I remember I was with two of my best friends at the time. And one of the girls playing, I had a huge, huge, huge secret crush on her, like the biggest crush. And out of nowhere, like literally out of nowhere, she had like made a basket in basketball. And I said, "She is so hot." And then my two of my best friends looked at me and I was just like, "Oh my goodness, Katie, how are you going to get out of this one?" And I was like, "Yeah, hot, like on fire. Like as in she's on fire. Look how great she is. She's making all of these things." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, like why did that just come out right now? Like I can't be having these slip ups. This can't be happening. I got to be normal." But yeah, the crushes continued and I just kept saying I got to push this down, push this down, push this down. And I was always different. I really was. And so many things, like looking back now, I was always a little bit different. And that's okay. That is me and that was me. And I think that's a beautiful thing too. And whoever is out there, whoever is listening to this, honestly embrace the things about you that are different because that's genuinely what makes you special. I wish I would have done that earlier on. I'm happy I'm doing it now, but I wish I could have done that at an earlier age. It's just back then it wasn't celebrated. It really wasn't. So yeah, life kind of carried on for a little while. I kept thinking that my feelings were going to go away, that I was going to stop having these crushes, and I would say that by the time I hit about 16, 17 was when I was in a really dark place, not only regarding my mother's death, but also just everything was too much. I just felt really overwhelmed, and I did somehow manage to get through it. Think I think that was around the time when, and I don't recommend this to anybody. I'm not promoting this, but at that time in my life, I was in such a dark place that I did actually turn to grass during that time. And I'm not promoting it, but what I am saying is during that time in my life, I'm thankful that I had that because I don't know what would have gotten me through that dark time if I didn't have something like that. And, everybody's different. I respect everybody's opinions on it, but, you know, I understand why certain people do turn to that if they're in a dark space because it was for me a temporary solution. I was in an environment in a small town I couldn't get out of. I couldn't escape that. And I just needed something. And it happened to be that. To this day, like I said, I don't promote it, but I don't regret that I had to do what I had to do. And I would say that when I was 17, um, was also kind of an interesting time for me. That was around the time when I had fallen in love with my best friend. And it was somebody I had known since I was 4 years old. And our moms were also best friends. So this was a very difficult situation as well. It did make me start to get upset with myself because I knew that I was having uncontrollable feelings for this person. And it just felt like I felt helpless about it because this was my best friend. And I remember just praying to God and saying, God, like, just please make it stop. Like, I don't want to be in love with my best friend because I don't want to lose this person. But it was me. Like, that was me. And it was a really hard time for me. It was a really hard time. And I had just been suppressing so much for so long. And then it got to the point where I just was like, okay, wow, like this is really who I am. Wow. And I just didn't want to, you know, lose my best friend at all. And it's crazy because there's so many people out there that say, oh, being gay is a choice and this and that. No, it's definitely not a choice. If I'm happy with my life, extremely happy with my life. I love my girlfriend, the girlfriend that I have right now. I would never trade that for anything. But whoever says, "Oh, it's easy," or it's a choice, no. No. Definitely not an easy route at all. Definitely not something somebody wishes for at all. Definitely not. Nobody says, "Hey, God, can you just do me a huge favor? Can you just make me gay? It's just going to make everything in my life so much easier." Definitely not. Definitely not. I have a beautiful life. Yes, but definitely that was a time where I just, this was a lot for me. It was really a lot to have all these feelings, emotions. I didn't have words for it. I had feelings, and my feelings were so much to where it was like it would take up the whole room. I would have to like leave and go to a different room because I'm like, just too much for me. I was so overwhelmed. And I nobody wants to fall in love with their best friend and potentially lose them. And you know, we live in a world that can be sometimes really cruel. And sometimes I think about it in a way of, if you're out on the streets or wherever you are and you hear somebody say like a racist slur to a person, you'll look at that person the majority of the time and be like, you're an a-hole. Like, wow, you're a jerk. But the majority of the time, as a society, if we hear somebody making a remark against a gay person or a homophobic remark, this is something that's backed by religion, by so many religions. Therefore, it's accepted in society and it's validated. And that's something I think a lot of people forget, is that this is a hatred that's backed by a religion. And one thing I did forget to mention, actually, and I'm going to mention it now, is when I was growing up, I grew up Catholic. So, and not just Catholic. I mean, my name is Mary Catherine Ann. Like, I am Catholic to a T. And we were going to church every Sunday. I went to communion, Sunday school, church, all of this. Like, religious, religious, religious. And I have a very strong relationship with God. I've never, and that's something that has never wavered. Like, I've always believed in God. And for those of you who don't, that's fine. I'm not trying to push my views on you. But for me personally, I've believed in God since day one. And I have an unwavering faith in God. And I think people find it strange a lot of times, thinking that two of those things can coexist, but they can. And I know for a fact that God loves me. I don't even question it. Like, I understand how some people that are gay, they do maybe question it. I get it, but I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, I don't even question it for even a second. Like, I know God loves me. I know, because God made me, and that's the thing. God made me. God created me. God created all of us. So yeah, that's just like an interesting thing, is when religion gets in the way of this hatred. And not all churches are like that. There's many churches that they say, you know what, God is love. Like, God is love. Like, love, God says, love your neighbor, all this. Doesn't matter. I don't want to get into that. That we'll save that for another day, but for any of you guys out there wondering. And after I had graduated, I had moved to Bellingham to go there to a community college, Whatcom Community College. And that was also a good time for me as well, I have to say. It was eye opening. It was also a place where the people were a little bit more open, a little bit different. It was nice to get out of a small town and see that there were people who um, are different, are accepting of also people that were different. That was a nice thing for me to see as well. And yeah, still struggling at this time, still just confused, overwhelmed, sometimes feeling really helpless about my sexuality. And actually, I had so many times when I had wanted to come out to just be myself, but I was so scared. I was so afraid. I had so much fear regarding the person that I was, the person that I am. And I didn't know how. I just didn't know how. And I think that's what it comes down to. I didn't know how. And I didn't know if I would ever come out, because I thought my life would be so much easier if I could just pretend to be straight, which I did a terrible job at, but I was trying. It's like an elephant in a china shop, it's one of those kind of things. But hey, and I think the biggest turnaround for me was when I had gone to Australia for a year and I was able to really have a lot more time for myself, to be with myself, to reflect, to spend time in nature. All of those things, I feel like, genuinely helped me. And to also realize that there's a whole world out there. It wasn't that I had met anybody. Actually, I did meet one gay person on that trip. Yeah, actually, when I was in New Zealand, when we were traveling, one of the girls that I had traveled with was from Israel, and she was also a lesbian. And I remember, I didn't have a crush on her or anything like that, but I remember I was so amazed that she was so open and so honest with who she was. But I also saw how much hate, not even, maybe not, the word isn't hate, but that maybe the word is, she got a lot of things thrown at her from people because of her sexuality. And I remember thinking, I don't want that. Like, I'm not ready for that right now. I don't want to have to deal with all these remarks from people. And she was tough enough to handle it. But at that time, I just felt like, I don't want all that right now. And I remember the last day I saw her, she, she inspired me. She really did. But the last day I had seen her, I had told her, I said, "Hey, I just want to let you know I'm gay." And she said, "What the heck? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" She's like, "I literally have to go in like 5 minutes." But I had planned it like that because I wanted to say it. And that was like finally saying it out loud to a person where I felt like they weren't going to judge me. And I just said it. And I said it to her. And I felt happy in that moment that I was able to do that. Really happy. It felt like a little bit of a relief, but I knew I still had a long ways to go at that time. So, like I said, during that time, I had done like a lot of reflection and everything. And I knew I was different. I knew I had to accept it. And when I did get back from Australia, I was working as a barista for a little while. And it got to the point where there weren't enough shifts for me there. They could give me like 2 shifts type of thing. And I was like, look, I can't make it with 2 shifts a week. And then I had decided I was going to move back in with my dad. So that's what I ended up doing. I ended up moving back in with my dad. And this was a very low time in my life. Very, very, very low. The last money that I had spent in Las Vegas. I'd come back from Australia with a decent amount of money, and then at that time when I'd come back, I was like, "Hey, let me book a trip to Vegas with a couple of my friends," right? Well, I literally went to Vegas with the last $300 that I had. I know, who goes to Vegas with $300? I did. And let's just say definitely wasn't enough, and it was my last $300. So, yeah, that was very interesting to say the least. So I'm living with my dad and my brother. You know, none of us had any money. I was living on food stamps. I didn't have a penny to my name. Not a penny. Literally nothing. I had nothing to my name. This was a very desperate time for me because I felt like I was in a room and all the walls were closing in. I felt like I I know I'm gay. I have to confront this. I have to face this. And I've said it once, I'll say it again, which is, those, if you're in an ocean or if you're in a lake and there's those buoys that are attached to the rope and you push them down under the water and they always come back up, right? You push them down, they come back up. Well, that was being gay. I had pushed it down for so long. I had pushed it down for my whole life. And you can push something down. That doesn't mean it's going to go away. And that doesn't mean it's going to take away anything. And it was finally like, I couldn't push it down anymore to hide it from people. It was like, no, I'm here now. Like, you better get used to me. I'm not going anywhere. This is me. So it's looking at me. I'm looking at it like, oh, great. You have to come to me when I'm broke. Like, great. You're going to come to me when I'm broke. So if I even do try and go on a date with a girl, where am I going to take her? Like, nowhere. So it was just a crazy time. And at that time, I couldn't even get a job. I remember I had a job interview, but I didn't even have enough gas money to get to the job interview. And I remember asking my dad, "Do you have any money? I need some gas money." He didn't have any money at the time either. So I literally had to go in the couch, put my hands in there, find coins, and see if there was any money I could come up with for some gas money to get to this job interview. I made it to the job interview for a job I really wanted, and I felt like this could really help me out because it was a well paying job. But unfortunately, I didn't get the job. So I'm like, all right, you know what? Enough with jobs. Enough with jobs for now. Um, and so I was like, all right. I had started watching Oprah. I had started watching Ellen to try and get some type of inspiration about how I was going to do this. I was watching YouTube videos about people coming out to their family and all that. There wasn't that many, to be honest. Like, there was some out there, but not that many. And there wasn't a lot of people for me to really look up to. Really not. And I didn't have a manual or like a blueprint about how am I going to go about this. I was in such a dark place. I was in a really, 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 really dark place. But I will say, one of my strengths and something I'm happy about me is no matter how down I am in life, I can literally be. I'm a person, I've been in some pretty tough situations, some pretty dark moments, but the happiest thing I am about myself is no matter how dark things get for me, I never lose hope. Even if I have 1% of hope, I never lose that hope. And if there is anybody out there, if you are going through a tough time when it comes to your sexuality or whatever, keep the hope. Even if it's just a little bit, do not lose that hope. There is hope. Keep the hope always. Keep the hope, really, because there is hope. And that don't ever forget that, really. That's really true. And find the things that give you hope. For me, it was Oprah. Like, I was watching Oprah on repeat. Ellen a little bit, but not that much, to be honest. And then the YouTube videos. And I was like, all right, Katie, like, you better get on with this, because I felt like I was at that place where I had no money. I had not so much of an idea of where I was going with my life, but I knew that if I wanted to go anywhere in my life, I first had to cross this hurdle of finally accepting. Not only accepting, but also telling the people closest to me, because I knew that once I had told them, I was going to need support as well. And I was like, I just gotta do this. So I got ready. I decided that the first person that I was going to tell was going to be my brother. And my brother is a very, very sweet individual. That's why I also decided to tell him first, because he's just a wonderful person. He really is. I love my brother. And it's funny. It's funny. It really is, looking back. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go out with my brother for a walk. His name is Andrew. And I decided I'm going to take him for a little walk, and I'm going to somehow, some way find the courage to tell him. So we went for a walk. We're outside and walking around, talking about this, about that. I look at him and I go, Andrew, are you gay? And he goes, no, what the fuck? I'm not gay. Are you kidding me? No, what? No. And I go, oh, well, I am. And he goes, oh, yeah, I don't care. I kind of thought so anyway. Like, yeah, whatever. Like, no big deal. And then we hugged and everything. And I was like, did you know? And he goes, yeah, I kind of thought so, but I wasn't really sure. I didn't know how to ask. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, maybe if he knows, then the other people kind of know. And so the second person I told was my sister. And my sister, she's my older sister. She's older, 5 years older than me. My brother's 3 years older than me. And so with my sister, it was a little bit different. So my sister and we have definitely some similarities, but I would say that in other things, we're very different. And I would describe my sister kind of as Elle Woods from Legally Blonde. Now, that's not meant as a bad thing, because Elle Woods is smart. Elle Woods went to Harvard, So if you're listening, sis, it's not meant like that. Elle Woods went to Harvard, okay? Okay. So I said, all right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tell my sister. And So sat her down. Andrew, my brother, was in the background for some moral support. Sat her down on a chair, said, "Hey, sis, there's something I really got to tell you." And, she said, "What?" I said, "Sis, I'm gay." She looks at me. She goes, "No, no, you're not gay. I'm being punked. I'm being punked right now." It's like, "No, no, like, I'm really gay. No, 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 no. Where's Ashton Kutcher? Like, where's the cameras? Like, it's definitely, somebody's pranking me. You're pranking me." I'm like, "No, no, like, I'm really not, sis. Like, I'm gay. No, 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 you're not." I'm like, "No, I am." And took her a little while until she finally realized that no, this isn't a prank. There's no Ashton Kutcher. There's no cameras. I'm really gay. And in her defense, I was a bit of a prankster, especially growing up, a huge prankster. I used to let off fart bombs at the neighbors and all that. So I get why she thought it was a prank. Um, but one of the things for anybody that is coming out or dealing with that is it's not just hard for us, I think, to come out. You also have to you have to give people time, a little bit of time to kind of digest what you have told them. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen overnight. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. And I will say my sister is the most supportive person that I have in my life. 100%. But I do think it did take her maybe a little bit more time. And that's nothing against her. It's just that everybody's different. And I know for her, it was, I was her little sister. And maybe growing up, she had wanted me to be a little bit more girly. And, she had tried to curl my hair a lot. And, yeah, maybe it was just kind of hard for her. So I would never hold that against a person, and we should never hold that against people because that's big news to take down. And I remember her telling me, "Well, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me?" And that's another hard thing I have to say for anybody coming out is people can feel like you betrayed them. And for me personally, I felt bad. Like I felt like I had also betrayed people because I was not necessarily lying to anybody, but I was hiding a part of myself. I did that for survival reasons, for safety reasons, all of the above. But that can be a hard thing of why wouldn't you tell me? And yeah, I mean, you don't know how a person is going to react. And so people can get kind of hurt like why didn't you just tell me? But everybody has their own path, and there's some people who don't even feel comfortable coming out until they're 60 or 70. Everybody's different and everybody should be respected because it's not a everybody's journey is different and it's not an easy journey. So, like I said, my sister is without a doubt, hands down, one of the most supportive people when it comes to me and my sexuality, but maybe she needed a little bit longer. So, with my dad, I was also very nervous to tell my father as well. I ended up just bawling my eyes out and I told him. And, my dad was a high school teacher. So he said, "Oh my gosh, Katie, like, um, I'm so happy you're gay." He's like, "My favorite students are the ones that are gay. They're all nice. They're just nice people." So that was also a relief, was, that was my immediate family that I told. And, other family members were really sweet as well. I remember telling my Aunt Linda, she said, "Honey, I don't care if you're purple, green, blue, or yellow. I love you no matter what." And for me, it was really cool to see that reaction, I have to say, because I didn't know. You don't know how people are going to take it. You really don't. And even if you think when you're coming out, like, oh, these people will be very accepting. No, it's not always the case. Sometimes you can get really surprised by the people that are there for you and aren't. And that's a very interesting thing as well. So, believe it or not, after telling them, I was actually probably more nervous to tell my friends than anything else because I didn't know how they were going to take it. I didn't know if they were going to disown me and say, we don't want you as our friend anymore. I didn't know. Like, I was so scared. I was so terrified. And I remember my dad had sent me videos to try and prepare me a little bit. Videos where it's like, it gets better. And there are videos out there in case any of you guys want to watch them on YouTube. You can find them. Just it gets better, and it does get better for anybody out there that's wanting to come out, or if you have a friend or a family member, however, whoever it is, tell them it does get better or share this with them. It definitely does get better, 100%. But it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. So telling my friends, right? I had announced to them that I had some big news to tell them. And I wanted to do it with everybody together because this was important for me. I didn't want to tell one person and then play the telephone game. I wanted everybody to sit together to tell everybody at once. But what happened was a couple people were late. So one of my friends was already there and she was like, just tell me, just tell me, just tell me. And finally I told her and she was like, oh my goodness, Katie, that's what you had to tell us. She was like, we thought you had cancer. She was like, everybody is a little bit gay. I don't see what the big deal is. And I was like, thank goodness. Like, thank goodness. And then everybody else came. I told them, and everybody was fine about it. And that was a huge relief for me, a really big relief. And I am lucky. I am very lucky. That's not the case for everybody. It's really not. I would say I had about a 90% success rate of the people in my life that wanted to be around me and accepted me. And then there was about a 10% amount of people that were, just drop contact with me. And my thoughts about that are good riddance personally. Nobody has to accept me as I am. And I'm never going to force anybody to be in my life if they don't want to be. I'm not going to hold anybody back. They're their own person. They can do whatever they want to do. That's how I feel about it. But what I will say is I think it is strange that we live in a world where I have to be, accepted for just being me because, I did come out as gay. Yes, that is a part of me. But the person that they knew before is still the same person. It's not like I told them, hey, I'm going to be purple now. Or, I mean, I'm the same person. It's just that's one more part of me. And I always, it's funny because I like to say it's not like I went out and killed 100 bunnies or something. And I have to tell you, hey, I killed 100 person, or hey, I murdered a person and hid him in my backyard. It's nothing like that. And I feel like as a society we make it feel like this huge thing, and I get it because of safety reasons, depending on where you're growing up, who you're surrounded by, and religion and all these things. I get it. But for me it's just a sad thing. It is a sad thing that we still have that today. And yeah, it's just funny. It's funny because people are always be like, oh, it was worse 50 years ago. And I'm thinking, yeah, but in 50 years they'll be saying the same thing about, oh, it was worse 50 years ago. And we really have a long ways to go. But I think one of the biggest things is for people to tell their stories, no matter what the stories are, honestly. I think we can all learn a lot from each other. I do believe we are all connected. And I think and I hope and I dream of the day when everybody can all come together and we can see that we're so much more alike than we realize, because we really are. And I've traveled the world and I've seen it firsthand. Doesn't matter what country you're from, doesn't matter what language you speak. We all have feelings, we all have emotions. We're all so much more alike than anybody has any idea about. And another funny thing that I have to go through sometimes is people will be like, "Oh, well, I have no trouble with, gay people and this that." And I say, "I understand that." And they're like, "Well, I support gay people and this and that." I'm like, "I understand that, but I try to draw an analogy out, which is if you imagine you're at Times Square or if you're in a huge public space, right? And imagine somebody drawing a circle, a huge circle, huge white circle. And imagine a gay person or me standing in the middle of that circle, and in the very middle of that circle is a gay person. And then imagine on the very outside of that circle, you have 1,000 to 2,000 people. And 1,000 to 2,000 people are all staring directly at that gay person, right? Well, from your eyes are saying, "Well, I have no trouble with you." But the other eyes of, other people are like red eyes. Just imagine the green eyes are your eyes saying, "I have no trouble with you." And the red eyes are the people looking at the gay person saying, "I don't like you. I hate you." Well, if you're the person in the middle of that circle, you can feel that. I mean, you can literally feel that energy and that instability at times. And it can get to be a lot. I've been in some situations. I'm going to probably save that for a different podcast, but I have been in some situations and I consider myself to be a lucky one, but my safety, the safety of being a gay person is something you always have to keep in mind, whether you're holding hands and depending on where you are. It can be really scary. And I'm saying that now. Like, I'm saying that in 2024. And even just months ago I had a situation where I had to realize, hey, I got to really keep my safety together right now, because I can't go out here risking things. If people want to fight me or whatever, it's crazy out there. But that's beside the point. Um, I have to say it's been, let's see, I came out when I was what? 22. I came out when I was 22. I'm 34 now. It's been 12 years. I am so happy. I am so thankful that I made the decision to come out. I feel like I just feel like myself, and I don't feel different. I don't feel like being in a relationship with a woman makes me different. I really don't. I know that society sees me that way. I know that I feel different, as in I feel a little bit different than society, but I don't think that is 100% only to do with being gay. I think it also has to do with growing up without a mother. Made me, anyways, feel a little bit different, but it is hands down the top 10 best decisions I've ever made in my life. Depending on where you are, just know that there is support out there for you. There's websites, there's people, there's communities, there's organizations that are more than willing to go out of their way to make sure that you're safe, that you're cared for. And if you are a ally for the, I always don't like saying the LGBTQ because I can't keep up with everything. I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's so many. But if you're an ally of the gay community, one thing I do ask of you is to really be an ally. And we need you. We really need you. But we don't just need you emotionally. We sometimes will also need you to stand up if you hear certain things. And sometimes people need to be called out. And it's not a bad thing. Sometimes people don't even realize they're saying things. I just corrected somebody the other day and they just didn't have an idea. If you hear somebody saying something, just kind of politely tell them to watch their words. Another important thing to remember is don't out people. Don't out people because that can be very dangerous. I've been outed a few times and I'm lucky, but you don't do that to another person. It's not your place to out somebody. It's really not. That person deserves to do that themselves. And yeah, like I said, I'm thankful that I made that decision to come out because genuinely it's just accepting that this is a part of me. It's not 100% who I am, it's a part of me. And sometimes we have to accept certain things about ourselves in order to learn to love ourselves. And for me, it's still a process of, I can, I would say in my early days, I really, I just always felt like, oh, it would just be so much easier if I wasn't gay. But you just got to accept it. That's me. And I love that part of me. Even though it's not easy, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for anything because that's me. You know? Do you know what I mean? Like that's me. Like I'm gay and it's beautiful that I'm like that and how beautiful that we're all different on this planet and that we're not all the same because how boring would it be if all of us living on this planet were exactly the same? That's how I feel about it. But I'll probably get into things a different time, different topics when it comes to mental health regarding being gay, drinking problems regarding being gay, because those are also things that do need to come into consideration. I've also definitely struggled with my mental health. It's definitely going to be a lifelong thing for me, and it's overlooked as well to be yourself in a society that tells you you shouldn't be the way you are. It's not always that fun, but still wouldn't change it for anything. And yeah, guys, I just wanted to share this with you. It's hard, to be honest with you guys, to always put things and feelings into words, especially because I'm sharing this with you guys. It's an hour, and to share the last, from a child to now, to share that isn't always easy to do in an hour. I do try to do my best with that. Everybody's story is different, everybody's perspective is different. My goal was to give you guys a different perspective, to try to bring awareness to this issue. And yeah, let's just all try and make this world a little bit of a better place, Let's all have a little bit more empathy towards each other regarding that. We're not all the same. Thank goodness. My goodness. Imagine everybody walking around outside wearing, Adidas shoes, white pants, and little khaki shirt. No, we don't want that. We want everybody being different. We want a colorful life, don't we? If you guys do know anybody that is struggling with this, you should definitely share this episode with them to try and help them a little bit. And like I said, this was my story. Some people don't have it nearly nearly as good as I do have it, and I am lucky. I am grateful, and yeah, I'll definitely be doing another episode with you guys soon. I'm still working on getting my health up to 100%. It's taking a little bit longer than expected, but I wish you guys a lovely day, and I do hope that this was able to just spread some light to your day. Bye, guys. Until next time.